Dan Zaksheske, Outkick coach, you just talked about, what a massive weekend this is obviously for women's basketball, women's sports in general. One of the major issues facing women's sports right now is the discussion topic about the inclusion of transgender athletes, biological males, in women's sports. I was wondering if you would tell me your position on that issue.
This is South Carolina head coach Dawn Staley being asked a question by a person with Outkick.
Damn, you got deep on me, didn't you? I'm under the opinion of if you're a woman, you should play. If you consider yourself a woman and you want to play sports or vice versa, you should be able to play. That's my opinion. You want me to go deeper?
If you don't know Outkick, well, they're responsible for amplifying Riley Gaines and many others in the anti-trans movement.
Do you think transgender women should be able to participate
that's your question
in
you
college
want
basketball?
me to ask. I mean, you want to ask, so I'll give you that. Yes. So now the barnstorm of people are going to flood my timeline and be a distraction to me on one of the biggest days of our game, and I'm okay with that. I really am.
The writer who asked this question, Dan Zaksheske, is a failed ESPNer who was desperate to keep his career afloat. Reports indicate he asked this question and then left the press conference, which is also a tell. There are many things to pick apart here. The first is the framing of this question, because he said one of the major issues facing women's sports right now is the debate, discussion, topic of trans athletes. That is factually incorrect. Via usnews.com, it's estimated that less than half of 1% of high school athletes are trans, and that roughly 30 trans athletes compete openly in college sports. The Nebraska Examiner has that number, and I hate to say it, it's higher. Oh no. Rep. Bobby Scott of Virginia claims that as of last year, 32 trans athletes openly competed in collegiate sports. And that's out of some 500,000 athletes. According to an August report, 23 states have passed legislation to bar trans athletes from participating in sports that align with their gender identity since 2020. 2021, according to Human Rights Campaign, was the worst year for trans rights.
Mississippi is poised to ban transgender athletes from competing in women's sports in schools and universities. The state legislature passed the so-called Mississippi Fairness Act earlier this week. Last night, the Republican governor, Tate Reeves, tweeted that he would sign the bill, writing, and I quote, "It's crazy we have to address this." Mississippi isn't the only state debating this issue. Idaho passed a bill banning transgender women from competing in women's sports last year, but a federal district court has suspended the law, and it's yet to be enacted. Across our nation, at least 26 states have now introduced similar bills, mostly in Republican-controlled state legislatures.
Trans people have existed for a long, long time. And with Republican policies, they have tried to latch themselves onto different issues in order to get a real, what I see, desperate need of a win. And this has been happening over time. Leonard Leo is obviously the architect of the Supreme Court, but it's been carried down through on-the-ground activists who have been trying to tap into the deepest fears of Americans in order for them to switch allegiances and play into the boogeyman. They have converted a lot of people to become anti-abortion activists. They have recruited a lot of people to latch on to the reason your daughter isn't winning, or the reason there is an unfair advantage, is because guys can't win when they go up against other guys. So they just claim to be female and then they just start competing. When really, and this goes for someone like Chandler Parsons as well, who not only is grammatically incorrect, but also doesn't understand the issue when he tweets stuff like this. They don't understand. In their example, that someone like Zaksheske cannot just say that he is a woman and go compete. There is a process for stuff like that to happen. And if you know anybody who is trans, you will understand this is a grueling process. This is a process that I think pretty much, unless you fully understand who you are as a person, you wouldn't go through. You would not go through this. What these kids have had to endure, not only physically, but also mentally, emotionally, is depressing, stressful, draining. It brings a tear to a lot of people's eyes for what they have to deal with. The unaliving rate has never been higher than it is for trans people.
We will continue to see these laws challenged in court.
These laws can take a mental toll on trans youth. Last year, a national survey by the Trevor Project found 42% of LGBTQ youth said they seriously considered suicide. That includes more than half of transgender and non-binary youth.
They are already not doing well. They already face really high and really grave risks for violence, for mental health distress, for suicide, everything from lower grades and dropping out of school to future chances of homelessness and living in poverty.
And yet I see someone like this who intentionally asked this question, and Dawn Staley gives an appropriate, well thought out, measured response. Takes the sip of water, sees what's happening here, even calls out the writer, saying like, I know what you're doing. And yet, instead of everyone saying, wow, we should really look into this, we have the Riley Gaineses of the world weighing in. We have the Piers Morgans of the world who's also saying, so if LeBron wants to be a woman, he could just compete. No, that's not how any of this works. But it also goes to show the lack of education on so many levels when it comes to this issue, because they don't care to educate themselves. They care to play the culture war. They care to go for the low-hanging fruit, when really it is 28 feet above them, and they have to do the work to reach it. But they don't want to. They don't care to. And I absolutely hate that this person who asked this question is now being paraded as some hero to the right, which shows you their priorities. The numbers lay bare at how few athletes are trans that are competing on the high school level, less than half of 1%, and at the collegiate level. So when he says this is a major issue facing women's sports, it's not. It is a concocted facade of an issue that they continue to cling to because they are desperate to pander to win elections.
If there are any stories we missed, if there are any that you, the viewer, would like to submit, get at me and follow me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. DMs are open. Support the channel. All of our content is free. It's the least you could do. Become a paid channel member or go to tyt.com/join to support the network as a whole. Thank you so much. Have a great day.